Hi, Peter.
Hey there, how are you? Can you hear me okay? Guess not.
How's everybody doing?
Hey there.
Hey, Peter, how are you?
Doing well. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay. I was having some issues. I was on Zoom all day. For some reason, I'm not working.
Hey, Dr. Mike, how are you? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, that's a lot of paperwork.
What's up?
How'd the turkey go with the Big Easy fryer, Mike?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Perfect as always.
Good.
I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I scratched it out here on a little Post-it note. It still sits here on my desk. I'm very curious. And start with the Sunshine Law notice. This is the regular meeting of the Shade Tree Commission of the Borough of Fairhaven. In accordance with the provisions of the Open Public Meetings Act, public meetings may be held in person or by means of communication equipment to include streaming services and other online meeting platforms. Due to the COVID-19 situation, this meeting is being presented through the Zoom meeting platform. Public participation for this December 1st, 2021 Shade Tree Commission meeting is available by call-in phone number or through web conference Zoom. Members of the public will be on mute until the portion for public questions, comments, which will be announced. At that time, the public has the opportunity to question, comment by phone or through Zoom by the raise hand button. It will be called on at the appropriate time. Notice of this meeting was included in a schedule of meetings sent to the Asbury Park Press, the Two River Times, the Hub, and the Star Ledger on January 28th, 2021, posted on the Borough website, the bulletin board in the municipal building, and has remained continuously posted as required under the statute. With adequate notice having been given, the Shade Tree Commission Secretary is directed to include the statement in the minutes of the meeting. Kristin, you want to do a roll call, please?
Degani, absent. Degati,
Present?
D'Angelo,
Present.
Hoey,
Present.
McCabe, absent. Larson,
Present.
Paolo,
Present.
Reed,
Present.
Sullivan.
Here.
Okay, and Councilwoman Neff said she would be about 15 minutes late.
It confirms we have a quorum. Just join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Before we jump into the content, I want to welcome our newest Shade Tree Commissioner, Kristin Hoey. Many of you might know her from some of the coaching opportunities here in town for fourth graders, and I think others as well. Very pleased to have her. I've known Kristin a long time. She was a friend in Hoboken before we moved to the same town about a year apart. So, Kristin, welcome. You want to just give your a brief hello and why you like the idea of the Shade Tree Commission as your volunteer assignment for Fairhaven?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for that, Dave. And hello, everybody. Happy to see some very familiar faces. Really excited to join the Shade Tree Commission. I don't think I'm a commissioner, but I'm happy to be if you want me to be. I think I just got promoted. I have been in town for about 2.5 years. We have twin 10-year-old boy-girl twins. Same ages as a lot of people on the call. Really excited to be a part of this. I love the Fairhaven community and have been looking for opportunities to get more involved. And so really excited to be a part of this group. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Did everybody have a chance to look at the prior meeting minutes?
I have one.
So you want to make a motion to approve?
I have one comment that I accidentally titled it agenda versus minutes, so I'll make that change.
Thank you.
at the top.
Motion to approve the minutes from last meeting. Second, Joe.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right. All approved. Great. I'm a little under the weather today, so we'll jump right into it. I had my my COVID booster yesterday, so I've been just off all day for the last 24 hours. So I'll try to get through this clearly and quickly. First project, Salem White Oat Seedling. I have moved it from a windy spot to a more protected area. I have the intention of building it's kind of like a burlap windscreen, but questioning my handiness when it comes to fashioning burlap windscreens. So moving it to a place that's a little less exposed is the better solution for me. I was concerned last meeting that there was some sort of bacterial leaf scorch on our little seedling, but no, it was confirmed that was the normal leaf color for a tree that's about to enter hibernation for the winter. So I was relieved. Anything on the green initiative, Andrea?
So I think the one point that's probably very relevant to this team is, and Kelly, I think may have reached out to you, Dave, directly. I'm not sure, but Kelly Flanagan, who runs the green team, has been working on kind of closing out or addressing some of these sustainable New Jersey points. And I don't know who's familiar with sustainable New Jersey, but very kind of concise. It is a certification that towns can receive. It's a free thing. And it's kind of evidencing that you as a community, a municipality, are doing things to be more sustainable, green. It covers things from, energy efficiency to tree ordinances and a whole bunch of other things. Right now, Fairhaven is bronze status, and kind of the green team is really pushing to get us up to silver. Rumson is silver, Red Bank is silver. And so what you need to do is there's certain action points that you need to address, and there is a point system assigned to them. What we talked about is there's quite a few of them that touch upon tree related things, whether it's hazard tree inventory was one, tree maintenance programs, tree planting programs, etc. And so the thought was a lot of it could be addressed here within the shade tree. So my proposal would be maybe we make this an agenda item, and give us kind of something to look at prior to the next meeting. And I could share with everyone the information. I'll send an email with all the relevant links and kind of how you navigate the website. But I think it might be worthwhile for us in the next couple of weeks, each of us look at it. And then next time around, we could have it as an agenda item and figure out how we start helping the green team kind of address some of these things. And the outcome potentially is grants are given. So there are different grants that you can then apply for. So it's really valuable, one, in just being able to say that we are silver as a community, and then two, again, the ability to also potentially receive some funding. So I think that was the main thing I wanted to raise here.
Yeah, for sure. I think any opportunity to kind of qualify for grants, I think is a good endeavor. Do you know what the difference in the bronze level versus the silver levels? What is the hurdle that we need to clear that achieves silver?
So I'm going to check with Kelly to see if it may be more updated than the website says, but I quickly looked before this call. The website says we have 170 points. That might be a bit dated. I think we have more. To get to silver, it's 350, but I know we have a whole bunch of other things which we've addressed and just need to submit evidence for. So if I had to guess, we're probably low to mid 200s would be my guess. Okay. But I quickly look, and the 4 tree ordinance things that I looked at are 10+ points each. And I know we have some covered, so we could potentially get some quick wins of 20, 30, 40 points maybe. Okay. So it would be significant.
Okay. Well, I think that's a great add to the agenda, the Sustainable New Jersey. Christy, if you want to make a note of that for the next meeting, please. Anything else on the green initiative or sustainable journey?
No, I think that was the main thing. I mean, we did have a Fairhaven cleanup day, the last day of soccer the green team had organized. So it was just, again, to get the name out there for the green team and get the kids involved a little bit. And I think the viewers were going to try and continue to do those things. I know there was a table set up at the Knights of Columbus for the Shop Small Day, because it was a trolley stop along the way where they had some bags, reusable bags for kids to decorate. But in terms of kind of crossover to this group, I think it's this, Sustainable Jersey item.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I think Councilwoman Neff kind of explained to us a little bit in the last meeting about like the origins of the green team in general and like how it related to the sustainable New Jersey. That's great. Yeah, happy to help in any way when it comes to their initiatives. Leah's not here for social media. Is there any message that we want to pass along to Leah as far as content that might be added in here at the end of the year for our social media posts? No, if anybody thinks of anything, feel free to email Leah. I'm sure she's always looking for marketing and content. So, Jill, tree inventory. I owe you software and I cannot find the link.
No worries. To be honest, like this has not moved a needle at all since our last meeting. I've just had some other priorities that are more time sensitive. So we're still where we stand. I mean, I think getting a look at that software that Red Bank used, but it seems to me that there's a lot of other options out there. So I think even when we look at what Red Bank used, it would be worth our while to kind of compare what other towns have used too. I know Shrewsbury just recently did a tree inventory as well. The one thing that I will say is that there is a training for hazard tree. And so this could kind of tie back to the green team thing as well. There was an online one. Dave, I think you set that out as part of the CEUs or whatever. But the good news is that there's actually one in person in March. And it's worth 5 points or 5 hours or whatever it is. But there is a cost associated with it. And in speaking with Bill, the one thing that he did say is that having this sort of training is really helpful in taking a tree inventory. So I believe the date is March 22nd and it's all day. It's like a 9 to 3:30 type of situation, presumably in New Brunswick. But I was watching some YouTube videos about what they go over, like knocking on a tree with a mallet to hear like its hollowness, it kind of runs the gamut. So I'm going to put that on
normal things that we should all be doing as we walk around town.
I was like, yeah, I'm going to be, strapping on the harness, but it's something that hopefully my schedule will allow for me to go to, but I would love, I would love a friend to maybe do that as well.
So tomorrow is the online version. I actually did sign up for it early this week, just to.
Did? Okay.
Just because looking at our deficiency when it comes to the CEUs, I realized that would get us over the hurdle, so I decided to sign up. Christy, thank you very much for the rush purchase order with Rutgers. Okay. So I'll let you know how it goes. Bill told me today. He says it's a tremendous course. He's taken it a couple times, so I'm looking forward to it. But it is, it's 9 to 3.
So you're not going to be my friend in March? Like, is that what you're going to
You never know. You never know.
Okay. All right.
I love New Brunswick in March, right?
So I think obviously this needs to stay on the agenda, and it will. I definitely will have more free time once the new year starts to kind of focus on this a little bit more.
So I just made a note to ask the Rutgers people tomorrow if they can recommend tree inventory software. I want to, if there's, I would love a free version. I would prefer to, I was told that whatever we had was a free issued version, and I feel like it might have come from Rutgers. So maybe somebody there has some guidance. And so I'll pass it along to you if I get it. Yeah,
there was just some that I was looking at that kind of had a different perspective that I thought was a little bit easier to understand than what I was looking at on the Red Bank website. I mean, this is completely just literally a couple minutes running through. And since that was done so long ago, maybe their software has a better interface now. Who knows? So it just kind of when I was trying to figure out what Bill was talking about, all these other things bubbled up. So, as we're making that decision, it might be worth to just, do diligence to kind of compare what our options are.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. Tree inventory seems reasonably important. I think, kind of going back to some of the green team things, a tree inventory usually is one of those kind of qualifiers for grant money for different projects. So I think it is a long-term. Yeah.
Jill, just to if I can, it was March 22nd.
I believe it was. Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we can compare notes. If I'm available, I'd be happy to join.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Jill. Next, or any other questions, comments, concerns about anything we've spoken about, tree inventory or otherwise? Moving on to the administrative side, like I said, yeah, we have 3 CEUs right now. We need 8 total, so 5 tomorrow should get us over the hump. Kristin,
Dave,
I wanted to ask
I
you.
did CEUs, and I think Chris also did a CEU. We did the hazardous animals right after our meeting, and we submitted it. So do we not get that? Do you have a record of that?
I don't have a record of it, but it's worth inquiring. I think when I look at the NJUCF accreditation, it still says 3, but maybe there's a lag there. Do you know what date it was?
It was right after our last meeting, and Chris and I both did it the same day. We were discussing it. He got a certificate.
Wildlife management.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so you are currently only Chris got credit for that. So you took the same course?
Yes. I emailed, I can't remember her name.
The Emily.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I also had forwarded Chris Larson's request to be made whole because he did the same thing. I'm still waiting to hear from her. Some of this information on their website is outdated as far as committee members as well. So I asked her to update all of it. And Mike, do you have any documentation of sorts of what you took? I can try to pull that through for you. You could forward it to me.
I will forward. I'll forward it to you.
You got your certificate.
Christy, do you have mine on there from like the spring?
Was that stewardship grants?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And Dave as well.
Okay.
So those 3, that's all that has been accounted for.
And I did one the day after our last meeting as well on the communicating regarding the spotted lanternfly.
Okay.
I was holding off on communicating that I did that until I had the CEU credits, which I'm still working on, but I did get a response last week and sent a follow-up request. So I'm hoping that's coming.
Okay.
That's 1 credit.
Right.
So, I mean, I have acknowledgement that from the, I have an email that says, thank you for attending.
Would you mind forwarding that to me?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
I'm signed up for one on Wednesday for 1.5. It's about invasive vines.
Okay.
Great. Flurry of activity here at the end. This is great. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, if make sure when you get your credential for completing the class, send it to Christy. What I was actually going to ask Kristin if, as an intro project here, maybe you and Christy can put your heads together on. Well, Christy organized it already, where we have 2 things to pursue by February 15th, 2022. The 2 accreditations we have are NJUCF accreditation and then the Arbor Day Foundation. And I know that some of this work has already been done, but I think it'll kind of give you a good foundation as to like what are like annually what we have to accomplish as a commission, and might just be a bit of a intro education as to what we
happy to.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Homework on the first night. Rough.
You're a highly paid volunteer, right? So all right, guys. Andrea, anything from the plaque folks, regarding the tree at the Normandy? Is there a heritage or a signature classification pending?
So we had a call with Wendy actually about this, and she's been chasing. She hasn't gotten full clarity, but her proposal was, let's just run with a plaque for now with the signature status. If in time we are able to get the heritage, we can talk about it, address it, but her view is let's just move forward. So I guess my question is, next step is, who should I coordinate with now to go ahead and try and source the plaque?
Christy, you sent me some information about that like two meetings ago, right?
Yes, I sent you a couple of vendors that DJ used for Parks and Rec, Bicentennial Hall. And I can forward them to Andrea if you'd like to look into the vendors and style and everything you want. Yep. Okay.
Thank you. Any questions or comments so far? Moving on, Peter, Kwanzaa Cherry Tree giveaway. I see you created a presentation. Thank you very much for the efforts. Looking forward to what you found.
Yeah. Well, don't get too excited, but I did figure a picture's worth 1,000 words. So maybe a presentation's overkill, but I did just take a little bit of time to sort of dimension the problem. And again, the idea raised in the last discussion was maybe given the conversations of the replacement of the Kwanzaa cherry trees at the corner of Fairhaven Road and Ridge Road, or the potential replacement over time, the notion was raised to potentially give, offer trees to folks living on Fairhaven Road, with the notion that over time we might be able to create sort of a tree-lined street with, some number of cherry trees being kind of notable on the road. And so my first thought was, well, let's just see how many spots there are for cherry trees. So I went just online. Well, I did a little ride down Fairhaven Road, and then I went online, and I can share that with you, Christy, if you can let me share my screen.
Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see here. All right. Can you guys see that?
Yep, see it.
All right. So what I did was I just started with, let me see if I can blow this up all the way. No, you're probably not seeing that, right?
Well, we see the Google map. You
see the Google map. Okay, I had some things popping up on my other screens. So this is kind of the area from basically from River Road to Ridge Road on Fairhaven Road. And I then zoomed into that corner where the existing trees are. And I very unscientifically went to the key on the right at 20 feet, and I drew two 20-foot lines and made basically a 40-foot circle that represents roughly one of these trees if you kind of measure it up against the tree. I also just looked online at what the canopy of a Kwanzaa cherry tree looks like, and it seems to be in the 30 to 40-foot range, although it depends on where you look as to what that size is. And what I then did was just kind of look down the road and kind of place a tree in a particular spot that we might all recognize. This is over by McCarter Pond, right? And another one here over by Sickles. And so, I mean, that's, again, just to give a sense for kind of size. And then I just sort of went up the road. I think instead of playing, I did a little video, but I think instead of doing that, I'm just going to pull up Google Maps and just zoom in, and maybe we can together take a 2-minute look up Fairhaven Road. And if you can imagine that circle that was right here, we can just look at some of the places on the road where we might be able to fill in some holes. And so there's obviously quite a few trees on this road already, but a few spots pop up here and there.
Yeah, there's open space there.
Yeah. When I did go through this and very unscientifically took, just kind of counted up those spaces, they added up to 35 spots on the road between, again, Ridge Road and River Road. But just so you can kind of get a sense for what that looks like, I thought it was helpful to just sort of see it. So
that was really great, Peter. Thank you.
There we are.
35 spots, huh?
Yeah, that's my wild guesstimate. But yeah, I think it's a reasonable, it's not 100 and it's not 20.
Yeah, but it's, I think we talked about like kind of the long-term vision with this particular project where, if 25 to 30 trees go in the near term, then as space becomes available. Yeah. Right. If you can envision what Fairhaven Road would look like with cherry trees all the way down it, or at least, I think it would be a really great long-term project for us to pursue. That's really great. Yeah. Any other? It looks like you have more thoughts. No, I mean, I really just described this in the discussion. As you said, Dave, I think that if this became a thing, people might, follow suit and decide that they would,
like to add a cherry tree as other trees are replaced. There was the notion of considering a native alternative. So that might be something that we add to the list of things to consider. And then we also had discussed, setbacks from the street, overhead power lines, because there's a power line running up one side of the road, future sidewalk installations, et cetera. So, I think it has some merit. It seems to be feasible, at least from a space perspective, but certainly needs a whole lot more work.
I think this is a great start. I'd be curious what the cost of 30 Kwanzaa cherry trees might be.
Yeah, good question. I have not looked at that yet.
Because that might be, I don't know. I think it's something that maybe we propose to the governing body at some point. Could say that maybe there's some, obviously preliminary work here for a long-term project. And I don't know, I'm wondering if maybe there's a Sustainable New Jersey grant option.
David, on the cost piece, were we able to figure out when we were talking last time about the ordinance in town and how it was mentioned that the fees paid to cut down trees, a portion of it, I believe, is meant to get allocated to this shade tree. Have we been able to kind of do that audit trail to see if we are, as a group, getting some of those funds and it could help?
Let's table that for a second. We have the tree ordinance on the agenda later, and I think it's going to be a much more robust conversation that Dr. Mike's prepared for. So, but yeah, that is part of that conversation. So we'll table that for just a couple minutes here.
I just wanted to mention, sorry, first of all, that I had to be late a few minutes, but I wanted to mention that I was made aware that there are funds with the natural fields area. They have funds that the chair of the natural fields mentioned to me that they would be willing to provide some of those funds to help possibly replace the cherry trees that we're looking to replace in sequence. Or possibly to this idea to, provide other trees. So I don't know, just wanted to mention that. I'm not sure if you were aware of that. Maybe you're aware of that, or maybe Carolyn Ferguson already mentioned that to you, David?
Nothing specific about funds, but I did not think that we'd be able to do anything there without the involvement of the natural area folks. So,
all right. So just thought because I wasn't aware of it. It's in the few thousands. So just thought I would let you know, because that was something that she said that they would like to work in coordination with the shade tree because they may be able to help out as well.
That's great to know. Thank you. I will reach out to Carolyn Ferguson and see if we can kind of put our heads together on this. Sorry, just writing this down. All right, I have no updates from Bill Brooks. We spent, I know he's been on vacation for a week, but I spent a lot of time talking to him about the tree ordinance the past couple of weeks. So we'll, I'll incorporate those when we get to the next agenda item. Anybody have any other questions or comments about the Kwanzaa cherry tree concept? Peter, great job. Thank you very much for that feasibility study. It's really, really great.
You're welcome. Happy to do it.
Awesome. Kristin, the bar has been set very high for.
Apparently, there's a presentation, there's all kinds of, there's videos, there's a lot going on. I'm nervous.
Awesome, guys. All right, Dr. Mike, tree ordinance review. What have you found for us?
All right, so as we discussed in the last meeting, there's been a lot of talk about our tree ordinance and how it may or may not be a bit outdated, especially when it compares to Rumson's tree ordinance. I forwarded, or had Christy, thank you very much for forwarding both ordinances at our last meeting, and we reviewed it. And just to bring everybody up to speed, including Kristin, the big salient points that we wanted to address on is an equitable fee schedule for tree removal. It seems that everybody has the feeling that we want to increase the fees for tree removal. The second issue is the building envelope and how it addresses not only the main structure of the property, but also other structures, including things like porches, patios, decks, and driveways, and how that affects the root systems of the trees around that. and the safety of those trees, and obviously the safety of the people inhabiting those residences. And then finally, the third issue is allowing the zoning board and or tree expert a little bit of leeway in evaluating each individual case when it comes to tree removal, and not just having a blanket or a broad either approach or fee schedule. So those are the three salient points that we wanted to address or have addressed in potentially changing the Fairhaven tree ordinance. I don't know if anybody has been able to go through both ordinances. If you have, you see that the Fairhaven tree ordinance is about 4 pages, whereas opposed the Rumson tree ordinance is about 10 pages, and it's a little more involved, and it touches on these subjects. And obviously, I think you all know this has been gaining traction in the town. There's a lot of people who are very interested in tree removal, especially, or the tree removal issue, especially with a lot of older houses coming down and newer houses going up with removal of many trees and clear cutting of trees. So any questions or comments so far before we get into the nitty gritty?
I would add that, I would want to see a little bit more written and in the ordinance about the enforcement of this. I feel like there's, kind of the theoretics of an equitable fee schedule, and then going back, after a construction project and making sure that what was promised was done. So I think I would want some sort of language included. It may already be in the Rumson one. I didn't see it specifically, but I know that there's shade tree trust in some of these towns, and I think we have something similar that could be a facility for fees. But really, just more, being crystal clear on where the enforcement lies.
Yeah, and I was going to touch on that I was going to now go through the salient points of the Rumson tree ordinance and how it differs from ours, and the things that I would recommend making a change, or at least bringing up as proposed to change, and see what everybody thought about it. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but I was just going to go through the tree ordinance and then just touch on some points.
I may ask, before you start, Mike, I just wanted to ask if you have had a chance to speak with the mayor about this in the past week, or with Tall Leader, who is working with us on the land use committee. If you have, because we've also had a chance to speak about the tree issue at the land use committee. So I wasn't sure if someone reached out to you or David.
No one reached out to me. I spoke with the mayor probably about 3 weeks ago, but not in the past week.
So maybe I'll wait to hear what you say, but I'll also provide some feedback, because I think there are some ideas, and I think it'll be good for us to coordinate with the land use committee as they move forward with some proposed changes to zoning ordinances. This is viewed as a shade tree commission issue, but there was a view that we should be looking at some very stiff penalties.
I would argue that this is. I would argue this is not a shade tree commission issue. I would say that this is a town ordinance issue, and that we are providing our opinion, a white paper, so to speak, on how it can be improved. But I do think this lies with the governing body.
Yeah. And I think I agree with that too.
And we need to coordinate. I would very much like to see it coordinated with land use, because they similarly have a view that in some cases that should be some fairly stiff penalties for removing trees. But why don't you start first, and then I'll provide some feedback.
Yeah, and to clarify, remember, as a commission, we are our purview is the public trees, but we've been asked to make a recommendation because this is our area of expertise. And I agree with David, to make a white paper recommendation is an important thing for us to at least start to delve into. So if you do have the Rumson tree ordinance in front of you, I was just going to touch on a few points. The beginning of it just talks about definitions and word usage. But one thing that I think is very important is they do touch on a mitigation plans for when trees are removed. If there is some sort of plan to replace those trees, and in what function and what fashion. Also, it touches on the footprint of each residence or property, and touches on not only the house or the main structure itself, but also the adjacent structures, like we talked about, patios, decks, and driveways. The one first difference that I noticed between the two ordinances is that you need approval by the town. At least in Rumson, you need approval by the town for removal of a tree of 6 inches at diameter, or 6 inches diameter at breast height, which is about 4 feet high at the level of your breast. A tree which is 6 inches in diameter, that is considered a tree that is not permitted to be removed without a permit from the town. Fairhaven's ordinance is 10. And one of the first recommendations that I would make is that we switch it to a 6-inch diameter as opposed to a 10. And Rumson's tree ordinance gets into the nitty gritty of ornamental trees, obviously hollies or dogwoods. They tend to have a less thick trunk. So they have special carve outs for ornamental trees, which I think we also should address in our ordinance. Now, as far as the fee for tree removal, we touched on it last time. There are 2 points about this that I want to address. One of them is, at least in the Rumson tree removal or the tree ordinance plan, there is a disparity between people who are residents of the town and also builders. And there's different fee schedule for both a resident and also a builder. That is not touched on in the Fairhaven ordinance, but apparently, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, our town lawyer said that you have to keep it these fee schedules have to be equitable, and it's not legal to have a different fee schedule for different people as opposed to residents or builders. Is that correct?
That's
Have you heard
correct.
anything like
you can, charge more or less based on the activity, but not target the owner. So you can target the activity for restrictions, but not the person. And I mean, you can create your white paper, bring it to council, and of course he will help with the language so that it's, it makes sense.
Right, and this is something that Josh brought up to me. But again, if you look at section 16.1.4 of the Rumson tree ordinance, there is a disparity for different types of applications, single families versus all other applications, which I think they refer to as builders. So there is a disparity, but I think everybody on this board, on this commission, and also at the board level, and correct me if I'm wrong, is thinking of increasing these fees because, quite honestly, these fees are fairly minimal. $10 for removal of 5 trees or less, $50 for removal of trees between 6 and 10 trees, and then up to $100. So I think everybody's looking for increased fees for removals of trees. That's not something that I think that the commission should get into or what those fees should be, but I think we do agree that they should be increased. If we move on, the other salient point that I wanted to discuss is in section, let's see what section is this, 16.1.7 of the Rumson tree ordinance. And section B, it says the planning board or the zoning board shall consider all these factors in concerning a restricted activity. And I think this gives a little bit of leeway and a little bit of ability for the zoning board or the tree officer to make decisions on an individual basis, which is not something that we have in our Fairhaven ordinance. And I think it's a good thing to have, because like I said, every case is going to be different as we approach these issues. Anything so far?
Can I ask a question? Does it differentiate between trees in the sense, I get the feeling that right now, as long as you stay within a certain number of trees being taken down, when you kind of okay doing that? I mean, I just wonder if we can put more emphasis on the type of tree and how important that tree may be to be kept in the property, and maybe make different decisions based on that, have a more qualitative approach.
Yeah, there's a couple issues there, because there are differences in trees. For a non-ornamental or non-specimen tree, we have few specimen trees in town, and obviously ornamental trees are different, but there's pretty defined qualifications for what a permitted tree or a tree that needs permit to be removed is. Like I said, right now in Fairhaven, that's a diameter breast height of 10 inches as opposed to in Rumson 6. I think we should consider going to a 6-inch diameter breast height. But the nice thing about the Rumson the nice thing about the Rumson ordinance is that they make carve outs for specimen trees and also ornamental trees, which will be different. And the second issue about that is that I think that we do need to give the planning board or the zoning board or the tree officer some sort of leeway in these types of situations, because there are hazard trees that need to come down and different situations for each individual case. Also on the Rumson tree, go ahead.
Sorry, Mike. Is there something in the Rumson one, which I read, a couple weeks ago, about when you have construction, be it like a new home or you're putting in a pool or whatever, on how to protect trees that should remain standing. Like, I know that sometimes they put, owners will put a fence around a tree, but I'm just relating to this, I live on a block where every single house has come down, and there's one that's coming down recently where there was this like really wimpy little fence when they were removing the trees, and now they're in there digging the new foundation, and the fence is like underneath the dirt with like, construction vehicles all over the place. Is that something that Rumson addresses? And if not, is that something that Fairhaven should be addressing within the tree ordinance, or does that fall more under like a zoning or land use situation?
No, Jill, you took the words right out of my mouth, because actually that's the next thing I was going to address in the Rumson tree ordinance, section 16.1.9. They do have exactly that clause that protects existing trees and also street trees. And they talk about putting a fence around the canopy of that tree, which is typically where the root system is so these trees are to be protected, especially in cases where things are being built, new structures are being built like pools, decks, and driveways. And that's not something that's really definitively addressed in our ordinance. So that is a good point. Finally, violations and penalties. So an issue apparently has been in Fairhaven that builders and also homeowners are applying for tree removal, but then go ahead and removing those trees without approval. And Rumson does address this in their section 16.1.12 about violations and penalties. If trees have been removed without a permit, their fine range is between $200 and $2,000. And again, it's up to the discretion of the board. I think this is something that we should have, but again, what those fees may be, whether you want to increase them or keep them the same as Rumson, is something that could be determined at the board level. But again, it is addressed in the Rumson ordinance and not so much in the Fairhaven ordinance.
I think that's an important point. And I think in the discussions that I mentioned with the land use committee, the feeling was that the fees should be in the several $1,000s. So actually potentially substantially above what you just mentioned, because I think once you establish that if you remove a significant tree and we didn't know about it, and we have some very stiff penalties, you may provide a real disincentive for anybody else to do it again, and send a very strong message that we are serious about it. So that's one important area. I think another area that was mentioned is perhaps an escrow of some kind, so that if you're removing trees and you're supposed to be replacing trees, there's some kind of escrow involved, and you only get your money back after you've demonstrated that you put the trees back, and possibly after you've demonstrated that the trees are alive after a certain period of time from being planted. And therefore creating another type of incentive that there are funds attached to you putting the tree back where it needs to be. Because I think that another issue is that the homeowner agrees to replace, but the replacement doesn't happen. And I think it's my understanding that also if the tree dies, there is no recourse to making them do it, put in another one. So there was also a view that an escrow maybe should be established for replacement. So those are some of the ideas that came. In addition to, I think some of the issues you mentioned about that I asked about, that, you know, a qualitative analysis of the trees being put down and being able to make a decision, like you were saying, you know, to take into account the type of tree, and also a significant increase in the fee for each tree being removed.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I didn't really touch on the mitigation plan, but again, that is something that I think it's nice to have that leeway to give to the zoning board to work with the homeowner and or builder to devise a mitigation plan. So we always say right tree, right place, make sure there are native trees for this area, that they can survive where they are, that their root system won't be disrupted. So again, I want to get away from, I personally want to get away from the fact that, you know, okay, you need to put in 5 trees, but, you know, they may put them in a haphazard place, or like you said, may not take care of the trees and they'll be dead in a year. So it's something we definitely need to follow up on. And I like having that leeway and giving that, that a little bit of power to the zoning board and or tree officer and or planning board.
Can I just add also, I think that I love the idea of the escrow. I think that's smart. I would wonder how that would be addressed when ownership changes, because a lot of times, you know, the builder is owning the property and then they're flipping it to the homeowner. And where does that responsibility, or where will that responsibility lie once the ownership changes hands? Because the builder, you know, could just throw in a tree and then at the end of the day, like, they don't own the property anymore. So how are they responsible for making sure that that tree is, you know, appropriate and taken care of?
That's a really good question. I don't think I thought about that. We will have to figure that out with a lawyer probably.
Right.
Yeah.
You tie it to the property instead of the owner, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But, you know, once you have once monies are into an escrow, somebody is going to remember to take care of that tree and make sure they get that money back. Mm. So I think it would provide a real incentive, because I don't think people will forget that they have money tied in.
No, I doubt it. It's just a question of whose money it is and where it transfers.
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Yeah.
Good point.
That is a good point. Yeah, I like the idea of an escrow fund. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And, you know, like making sure that if we have fees, penalty fees, and fees attached to each tree being taken down, that we know that those funds are being, you know, can be used by the Shade Tree Commission. I think making sure that we can assure that, you know, we have a place to use the funds to replace trees and replace the canopy. I think it's very important that we ensure that that happens. Two things that I would like to leave you the thought with is that there is a question mark as to whether the Shade Tree Commission should expand its mission and have some say on some of these decisions going forward, rather than having only a single person, Bill Brooks, do it. I think there's something that maybe is a council decision, but also something that maybe you should opine on. So there's a question mark there onto the potential expansion of the Shade Tree's involvement with some of this decision making. And I would welcome your thoughts on that. And the second thing I wanted to mention before I forget is that it was proposed as an idea that once we work out some changes to this tree ordinance, that it could potentially go to the planning board, and the planning board could hold a hearing that could include the shade tree and the planning board to receive feedback from the residents, and then allow us to, from there, go ahead and make the changes. So we essentially have a very broad forum under the planning board, such that we can make sure that it's been addressed properly from a resident's perspective, but also ensuring that tie, right, with zoning and planning. So I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that. That was an offer that was made, whether you would like to do that.
I personally, I think that checks and balances are a good thing. So I think instead of funneling everything through one decision maker, I think in more of like a committee form might be the best way to pass judgment on certain requests. And I am cognizant. I want to get the public to participate on this subject. But no, Councilman F, I do think that once we kind of get our thoughts to the governing body, and we come and the governing body comes up with a draft for an updated tree ordinance, then I do think that within there, again, enforcement was the thing that I had on my mind, and that could be, that's not only an escrow account, but that's also like, where's the approval, where's the approval sit, so. I think all these things could be mentioned in however we make our recommendations to the governing body.
Yeah. Okay. So to summarize, basically, the key issues, I think, first of all, the diameter of breast height, I think could be changed. Obviously, there is a big push for increasing the fees for removal, and also obviously increasing the penalties if the application process is not followed correctly. And then also discussing the canopy and making it specifically a specific carve out or cut out in our ordinance, discussing the canopy and how they are affected by not only the primary structure on the property, but also adjacent structures. Anything else that anybody wants to add, or any comments or questions?
I want to say thanks, Mike. You did a really good job kind of putting this all together and making it cohesive. I appreciate the time you put into this. Would everyone be okay if we went to the public participation and see if anybody had any comments? All right, Christy, what do we think?
Okay, if you have anything you'd like to add to this discussion, we have 3 public attendees. Please raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to bring Tracy Cole over.
Hey, Tracy, welcome.
Hi, thanks, Dave. I'm listening tonight and really, really glad you're taking up this subject of the tree preservation ordinance. And I think it's usually called a tree preservation ordinance, and yet we continue to lose so many of our trees. So I do think changes are warranted. I think you have the will of the community that would support a more restrictive tree preservation ordinance, and I look forward to being able to assist with changes that would preserve the canopy and continue to maintain some of the character of Fairhaven that I think is beloved, and for some reason it's sort of falling between the cracks, between some of the land use ordinances that allow for large homes, and maybe even some procedural issues that allow authorization for trees to be removed, and enforcement or lack thereof. All of these things are important, and I think Dr. D'Angelo's summary and the discussion around those items are right on spot. So I look forward to continuing to hear what you have to say about it, and look forward to hearing it at the council level as well. Thanks for your good work.
Thanks for your comments. Anything else we should add to what we've discussed, or is there
I personally think that there's some interworking that could be, and it's a little premature for me to get into it, but because I've been giving it some thought, but there are some additional levers perhaps that could be incorporated by really working together, meaning the Environmental Commission, the Shade Tree Commission, the council. There's a disconnect right now that really is not difficult to remedy. It's just kind of housekeeping, keeping that communication going. And Laney does a good job of keeping the council informed, the Shade Tree and vice versa. But I think even Shade Tree Commission to Environmental Commission, there's some real good potential for connective tissue there, and the way your work can leverage their work and vice versa. So I think there's more that we can do to really amplify the good work of the Shade Tree Commission. And I'm not fully able to get into it yet because I'm starting to study it and take it all apart and look for ways in which we can improve it. But I do see some opportunities.
Great, thanks. Looking forward to your, your contributions on the at the council level on this initiative. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's see here. I see other hands raised.
Yes, I'm gonna let Claudia Brady in.
Hi, I have a couple comments, and they sort of blend together. This has been a fantastic discussion. I live on Fairhaven Road, not too far from those cherry trees, and they are absolutely magnificent. We've only lived there about 6-7 years. I don't know how old the tree was. It was in the front yard. It was not a Kwanzaa. It was a weeping cherry. It died. So just about 2 years ago. And I think you really have to look at the cherry trees. We have a second one in the backyard that we're struggling to keep. We're feeding it, doing everything we can to make it live, but I doubt that it lives. So I have a little bit of concern about the Kwanzaas, but as a neighbor to those trees, I would be happy to buy my own if I knew that you wanted to do this. I would be happy to put one in my front yard to do the concept. So then I'm going to take it back to this clearing of the spaces and the yards and the replacement of trees. Maybe you've taught about this, I'm sure you probably have in the past, but if we had a town tree or two that were identified that we sort of asked people to put in as their replacements, the town would start to become more organized in terms of what it has. Where I live in, I'm very fortunate, and because of my grandkids, I live there about a third of the year. And where I live the rest of the time, we all have, we started with Bradford pears. So the whole neighborhood in the right time of year looks like a Bradford pear. And Fairhaven is small enough that you could easily get some kind of a concept like that. And with the houses being torn down, you might be able to request that replacements be such and such. My only other comment about the escrow is, as I look at the budgets over the years, I think we pay to have somebody hold escrow dollars or something to that effect. And Lolini probably knows better. And I really don't think the town needs to increase its expenses, taxes. My taxes went up 17, my assessment went up over 17% this year. I don't know about all of you, but I'm sure I'm going to see that in my tax bill next year. So I just think that's something to look at, think about. If there is a cost to holding an escrow, is that really how we want to approach it? Thank you very much. You're fantastic. I love it. I don't know what the CEUs, how you get those, but they sound fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brady. I appreciate your participation. And we as a commission get credit for any townspeople taking any of those CEU courses. So I would encourage you to look on the Rutgers, I think it is the New Jersey Urban and Community Forestry website, which is like kind of maintained by Rutgers University. And if you take any of those CEU classes for any credits, just let Christy Larson know, and that gets added to our accomplishments for the year. So
sounds fantastic. Thank you. I would enjoy it.
Thank you very much.
Invasive vines on 12/7. Good stuff.
Hazard trees tomorrow, all day, baby. Any other questions or comments from the public? Any other questions, comments from the Shade Tree Commission on the tree ordinance subject?
I guess what we need to discuss as a commission is what we do as next steps. And I would ask Councilwoman Neff what she thinks we should do for next steps in regards to making a recommendation.
I would suggest that you come up with an initial proposal for a draft, and we possibly meet with thought leader, Peter Nazeski, and the mayor and Betsy Koch, which are the members of the land use committee. And after that, we decide on maybe what we want to do from that point, but it might be that we want to bring that to the council and to the planning board. So that I would say if it makes sense to follow that flow, that we have the chance to debate among zoning, if you will, and here, and then bring a proposal. I'm not sure. I don't think we're in time for this next council meeting, right? Or are we on the 20th?
The next council meeting is the 20th.
Is it too soon?
Mike, do you have anything kind of summarized already, or is it more
no,
white paper?
This is more just, you know, my own notes. I have nothing organized for a proposal, but I'd be happy to sit down.
If we could possibly borrow from the language from Rumson and cut and paste into our ordinance, make some changes as an initial draft, then I think we could have some further conversations about fees. I know we didn't discuss fees here, but I think there are some thoughts around that, what the fees might be, and we could plug that in. I don't know if we can do it in time for the next council meeting. At least to have something to begin discussing and discuss whether, have the council determine whether it wants to send it to the planning board for a joint, for some kind of joint event between planning board and Shade Tree Commission.
By the 20th, we wouldn't need anything written in legalese though, right? We could submit an opinion piece, right? If Mike was able to summarize his thoughts, and you know, there's nearly 3 weeks between now and that meeting, I think. If
that's all we can do, then that's all we can do. I mean, ideally we will get to a point that we have some draft with us, even if it hasn't been fully reviewed. But at least, you know, we should figure out how to get to a draft.
But I wouldn't want to burden Mike with that. Mike is, I don't think anybody here is an attorney or you know, somebody who's writing, you know, ordinance in the copy that it needs to be written. So I think that our opinion would be the first step, and you tell me if I'm wrong, but I know that we could probably pluck ordinance lines from Rumson, but it's probably better if we have our lists of our thoughts organized in, like, you know, needs, and then, you know, nice to haves, and then from there the legalese can be worked on by the professionals representing the governing body.
Yeah, and also
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, it's obviously the opinion of the commission. So, I mean, obviously, if you don't have anything to think about or to address right now, please email me or please email the commission so we can keep this discussion going before we make the presentation, if we are going to make a presentation to the board.
Okay, but why don't we take it offline and follow up from here separately? Can we follow up the three of us, and then we'll go from here and make a determination. Let's maybe commit to present something to the council on the 20th. I'll try to put that on the agenda, even if it's, like you said, an opinion with a few bullet points and you want to speak to it, or whatever it is that we feel, but at least have that discussion, because then that allows us to go the next step.
Right.
But we can coordinate offline, and we can coordinate with the land use. Even if we don't have a full-blown discussion with land use, I would like us to at least be sharing information and touch base, because I really feel like a lot of the things we do in the borough need to be done on a more integrated basis. And there are some great ideas from different sides that if we put it together, I think we can come up with something very strong and with a lot of support.
I agree. And do we need, I understand there was talk that this is under a little bit of a time crunch before the end of the year. Is that still the case, or do we have a little more time going into 2022?
David, that's why you said something about we needed to get this done by January so it could be implemented.
Yeah, I thought I heard something about that, meaning that ordinance changes happen in January. I could be completely wrong though. I thought I heard that things do need to be done at the beginning. You know what? I would honestly, Christy, is there a way we can find out?
The year that they're enacted, it has something to do with that. So you wouldn't want to pass it this year, and it has to take place next year. It's something to do with the calendar year.
Let's follow up on that, because I'm not sure why that's the case. Like I'm not, I mean, I can see a period, like for example, when we implemented the plastic bag ban ordinance, there was a 6-month period that the stores were given to essentially prepare for it until it became enacted. But that was 6 months. It was not a full calendar year. Maybe we need to ask that too. I'm not clear about that. I think Allison, Cinquangrana, and Teresa would know that answer for sure. We should probably check with them. So we might not be in as much of a time crunch as we think. Having said that, I really think we should address this as soon as we can. You know, maybe we'll do a set of changes this year, and we might decide we want to refine it further. But you know, at least if we do a good portion of what was discussed here, that will be some very, very meaningful changes, which I think will be fairly good.
Yeah, I agree. This is not just a one-time off thing. I think it's a very dynamic thing. And if we see that there are changes necessary in the coming years, then we could always make those changes.
I think,
yeah, so there'll always be opportunity for refinement, but you know, I think if you institute significant penalties and you increase the cost of taking down a tree, you allow more latitude for decision making by zoning and planning based on the types of trees and so on. A lot of the things you mentioned here, those are very meaningful changes.
I think incoming Councilwoman Cole mentioned that we have the will of the community here. So I think this is a really good start to something that everybody seems to be in favor of. So I want to thank you all for your efforts here. Dr. Mike, especially, really great job processing all this. So, and Peter, I don't want to forget about the PowerPoint. That was also really great and food for thought on what we can do. You know, and contribution by Ms. Brady, who lives on that street. That kind of, you know, it kind of solidifies the idea that this could be a good long-term project. So, absolutely. Anybody else have any comments, concerns about past updates or agenda items or the tree ordinance review? Any other members of the public have comments? The only thing I'll add here is I want to put a new agenda item on for next meeting. Speaking of the planning board approved a subdivision on 3rd Street, which is directly to the east of, it's at the end of where the Gentry reached 3rd. And the lot is going to be subdivided into 2, going to be a lot of trees coming down within all that because of the invasives and the damage to the trees. But what it's going to do is it's going to change the border of Sportsman Field, and the Board of Ed is interested in, they were certainly interested in working with the planning board on how to kind of replace that tree border there. But so it might be something for us to kind of work with the Board of Ed on if we have some funds and some trees that we want to donate to that section of that field. But we can table that until next meeting. Good meeting, guys. Does anybody have any other questions, comments, or concerns before we adjourn?
I just I had a idea when we were doing the cleanup that we could maybe, and I don't know if it's us or another group, but having like a group that would do the cleanup like we did, maybe turn it into firewood for some of the local residents. You know what I mean? Do it like monthly, and it would help clean that area up, and it would give people that have a desire to get the free firewood. So I don't know how to start with that. I thought I'd throw it here first and see if people had comments, thought it was a good idea or not, and figure out who it would go to, if us or another group, and move on with it. So
no, it's a good idea. I think everybody here would take free firewood. Where would this, so maybe if that was a cleanup of the both the Fairhaven Fields and Fairhaven Natural Area fall under the purview of the rec committee, I believe. Okay. It might be worth and what comes to mind is that the rec committee has kind of the Fairhaven Fields areas that we're talking about have open space that they can then maybe dedicate to where chopped wood might go. I don't know. I would say the rec committee probably is a good starting point for that.
Okay. I have someone that I know that's involved with the rec committee here, so I can ask her what her opinion is. But...
All right, appreciate it. See, it's the, you know, the connectivity between teams here was all was mentioned earlier. So, well, good. I mean, an hour and 10 minutes here, 12 minutes or so. I appreciate everybody's insights. Any other questions, comments, concerns before we adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Dr. Mike. Do we have a second? Ms. Hoey? Second by Ms. Hoey. All right, great meeting, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving, and we'll speak again
Thank you.
December, okay?
Thank you.
Paul.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.